Hello and welcome back to the Barefoot Preacher. Well, it has been a long time since I last did a video for this. Probably a month, if not more than that. If you've been following me on the trucking life, and giving updates on everything that's been going on with caregiver schedules for nights and days, and my own problems as well, and just been a series of delays. But if you remember back or look back to the previous video, I said that I wanted to look at some world religions, and that is what I'm going to start doing now. And for the next few episodes, that is the plan. Hopefully they will be in weeks following each other. Not as the plan at least, but as we've seen for this last month, it's not always what my plans that go on. So with this series, I will be looking at some of the major world religions, and with any world religion, or when you speak with someone that practices a different faith, you want to ask them and talk with them about what some of their beliefs are, as there will be areas that they may agree with on their faith, but again, there will be areas of difference as well. That's the case with pretty well all of them. And in this series, we're going to look at the general beliefs, then also about the differences between that faith and Christianity, and encouraging those, if you do practice one of these faiths, to come to Christ and to see what some of the differences are. Now, in this series, some people will try to say that I don't like someone because they practice a certain faith, or they may even hate them. No, that is not the case at all. I do care for individuals, and I want to see them come to Christianity, as I care for them, and I want to speak the truth in love. And that is my goal with these next few videos, to help educate my audience here, as well as to help other individuals. Now, my education or study in different world faiths comes primarily from reading, as well as watching other videos. So hopefully there should be a camera right here. I have a couple of recommendations that I obviously own, but would recommend to you. The first one is World Religions in a Nutshell, and that is by Ray Comfort of Living Waters. It gives probably, I would guess, about a dozen different religions, and it's probably 7 or 8 pages each, and isn't real thorough, but does give a lot of information on each. And for more in-depth study, then the other one here is a 3-book set of World Religions and Cults, and that is put out by Answers in Genesis, as several different authors of it. And guessing it may have like 30 different religions that it talks about. I will definitely not be going over every one of these, my goal right now is to probably just go over 5 or 6 of the major religions in the world right now. I may end up doing a few more, but probably not. We'll see how this subsection of the Barefoot Preacher series goes. But with all that said, let's go ahead and look at our first one for this series. And we're going to start with one of probably the oldest religions or faiths, and that is Judaism, or Jews. So if we read the Old Testament, then we see that Abraham was called by God, and through his descendants we ended up with the Israelites, and they really start in the book of Exodus especially. And through the Israelites, God chose them to be his chosen nation or his people, and that these Hebrews, or the Jews, they were pretty well interchangeably used, were God's chosen people, and he gave them all kinds of different rules and laws in order to live according to his will. And Christianity is therefore a continuation, or the, I guess, offshoot of this. And we can see this as we go throughout the Bible. So some might wonder, well, why does Judaism still exist today? That Jesus was the predicted coming Messiah that was so long spoke about and came. Well, from my perspective as a Christian, yes, I can definitely see that. However, that is not the case for everyone, and that unfortunately with a lot of world religions, that they may not completely trust the Bible, and whether intentionally or not, may have been led astray sometimes and not believe what is written. So we look here at 1 Corinthians 1, verse 23, and this is Paul writing to the church in Corinth. And this one verse here, it says, "But we preach Christ crucified, to the Jews a stumbling block, and to the Greeks foolishness." So in that time, Greeks were basically modern day atheists, which we'll talk about later. But to Jews, Christ was a stumbling block, and look at that here in a little bit. But modern Judaism is not necessarily something that a person chooses to become. So if your mother was Jewish, then that makes you a Jew as well. So you're born into it. And you can also join it as a choice as well, but it's not necessarily the only way. And from what I've read, there are a large variety of people who practice Judaism, that some are very orthodox, as we say, that are very by the book, and follow all the rules and regulations. And others are not, that they call themselves of the Jewish faith, but can also be atheists that don't even believe in God. So modern Jews that practice their faith according to the book. Well, what book do we talk about first? The main two scriptures that Jews follow are first the Torah, which is the first 5 books of what I call the Old Testament, or Genesis through Deuteronomy. These are the books of Moses, or the books of the law. And so those are the main books that they do, but also what I would call the Old Testament, that they give this good credence or high respect. And then also a more modern book, so to speak, is the Talmud that they follow. And this is more of the rabbis or leaders' answer, so to speak, of the New Testament. And this contains the laws and regulations for the modern Jews to follow. So in the Old Testament, we read that the Israelites, or the Jewish nation, had to follow all kinds of, say, dietary laws. And much of those are still followed today. That someone of Jewish religion will eat, like, say, beef and products from, say, chicken or fish or cows, but they have to be prepared a very certain way, and that they do not contain any blood and other regulations. But they will not eat anything from a pig, let's say. So no bacon or pork chops or anything of that sort. And other regulations are such as certain cups and bowls and all kinds of things for cooking and different couches. And there's a whole list of different regulations that could make a very long video. But again, this is just kind of going over an overview. But again, if you look at the Old Testament, we see that Israel had a lot of sacrificial laws, that in order to cover sin, they had daily sacrifices of sheep and bulls and goats. And this was because that without blood, there is no payment of sin. And today, Jews no longer practice this, but they do something annually called Yom Kippur, which is a time of confession of sins to their rabbis. However, it's not payment in blood. So, for my Jewish friends, I would look to Jesus as Messiah, that he was the perfect, spotless lamb, that whose blood was shed on our behalf to pay for our sins. That we no longer need to practice sacrifices as we used to. And also keep in mind that Jesus and all of the early Christians were Jews, or they started out as. However, looking at the Old Testament, Jesus, Paul, and others could point to everything that was predicted. and saw that Jesus was the spoken Messiah. That, especially with chapters such as Isaiah 53, spoke of what Jesus would suffer, and it was a very exact recount of what would happen only hundreds of years in the future. So Judaism today still looks for a coming Messiah, but there is a movement now that is called Jews for Jesus, and others that say how Jesus is the awaited Messiah. That is something we need to look for always, and for those that practice Judaism, that we can lovingly look at what is written in the Old Testament and see how it is fulfilled in Jesus and the New Testament. So that is kind of my Judaism in a nutshell. We will look at more in coming videos, but hopefully for opening introduction that makes sense and is helpful for you. But as always, I welcome feedback below, and thank you for watching the Barefoot Preacher series, and until next time, I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.